From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, The Zoomer, hosted by Marissa Lennox.
Welcome to The Zoomer. I'm Marissa Lennox. On today's show, we're talking personal safety. But before we unpack the legalities and strategies, we begin with a story that's made headlines this week. A young college student, just trying to earn a living, finds himself in a scary situation during a late-night shift. What unfolds may challenge your understanding of self-defense in Canada. Take a look.
It was 2:25 a.m. when the Peterborough Police Service arrived on the scene of a crime. Just 3 minutes earlier, a man was caught on surveillance footage standing outside a Circle K. When he enters the store, he pulls out a baseball bat. The store clerk had his back to the suspect, who then swung the bat, hitting the clerk in the back of the head. In a frenzy, the clerk grabs a hold of the bat and another man rushes over to assist the store clerk. As the three men fight over control of the bat, they end up outside. The suspect then stumbles away but is followed by the clerk, who swings the bat and hits the man from behind. The suspect's name is Jonathan Troy Hendel, a fentanyl addict with multiple criminal convictions. The store clerk, Tej Kalia, an international student from India. However, the police arrested and charged Tej with aggravated assault, and in doing so, have received international backlash.
I felt like fear for my safety. Whatever I did, that was just a self-defense to save my life first.
There was a lot of wild accusations and comments that would suggest that somehow our officers had done something wrong. I can tell you categorically, because I've seen the video, the right choice and the right decision was made.
But Tej's defense lawyer disagrees.
At a jury trial, 12 people are going to see this video, and they're going to see that what the police are telling them happened did not happen.
Well, I have the video on my phone, so let's see what people really think.
No, yeah. Once he took the weapon away, hitting him in the back of the head, he's running away. So then he's no longer a threat. He has his back turned to him.
This gentleman should not be facing 14 years for defending himself. That is just all kinds of shades of wrong.
So there you have it. That's what the people on the street had to say. Now, let's hear from the panel. Marissa, back to you.
Thanks, RJ. Joining me now are experts from various fields to dissect the complexities of this and self-defense in our country. And I'll start with you, Michael, and we'll begin with that story. Why were these charges laid? I mean, that this Circle K clerk is facing 14 years behind bars when the guy who brought the bat, the perpetrator, isn't facing the same charges.
The Circle K student wasn't acting as self-defense after a certain point. He should have, when the culprit left the store, he should have locked down the store. That's it.
So are these charges warranted?
Yes, these charges are warranted. He's not going to get the maximum you've referred to. That's just a maximum under the criminal code. But the police made the right decision to charge him. He used excessive force. He was no longer defending himself or the store. He was outright attacking the guy who had just attempted to rob him.
But there's no time for reason in that moment. I mean, how was he supposed to know that this guy was no longer a threat once he left the store?
Should have locked the door, called the police.
At what point does it stop being self-defense?
It stops being self-defense. I always use the analogy of using over the limit of your credit card. You have a credit card, you have the limit to use, and unfortunately, if you go over that limit, that's when it doesn't become self-defense anymore. And you're right, in the heat of the moment, it's really hard to, would I have done the same thing? I don't know. Like, every situation is different, depending on so many different variables and factors and, experience and age. Even he said he feared for his safety. No doubt he did. But at some point, yes, you need to stop. He's out of the store. The threat is gone. Stop. It's hard to do that sometimes.
It is, but he was no longer acting defensively. Once that guy was out of the store, that was it. If that same scenario had happened within the store, for example, the attack was ongoing within the store, maybe a different situation. But as soon as the guy left the store, that's no longer self-defense. He then became the aggressor. It's that simple.
What does the law say about self-defense in Canada? When are Canadians permitted to use force to defend themselves?
Right. Well, in Canada, we have the right to defend ourselves, our loved ones. We have the right to defend our property. But it's solely for the purpose of defense, defending yourself. You have to be reasonable. So a judge...
Wait a minute, what's reasonable?
What's reasonable is...
Someone breaks into your home in the night.
Right. Right. Well, if it's a bunch of teenagers who break into your home, they don't have any weapons, and you go after them with a golf club, that's no longer reasonable. You're now using excessive force against those teenagers.
But how are you supposed to know that they don't have any weapons?
You don't, oftentimes you don't. And you're right, it's a very difficult situation. But you have to remember, at some point, a judge is going to scrutinize your behavior and what you did. And some of the questions a judge is going to ask, for example, what was the nature of the threat or force? How imminent was the threat? Did you have other options? Did you have to go at the person with a baseball bat or a golf club in that scenario? They will look at what other options were open to you, right? So it's very important to keep that in mind.
Nikki, this is something that you've experienced firsthand. Can you tell us your story and how you felt in that moment?
Yeah, for sure. And I have something to say as well about how that clerk handled that situation. But I mean, I personally was attacked. This was quite a while ago, but I was put in a headlock and I was punched multiple times in the face, and I didn't see it coming. There was no warning. It was very sudden. And when that happens to you, you do experience time differently. When I can remember it very clearly, obviously, but you don't feel time passing the way that somebody who's just watching the clip on TV does. Like it actually, for me, it felt very slow. And I was thinking to myself, if I could get out of this, I'd kill this guy. But you don't perceive time the same. However, when we teach our self-defense seminars with Civilian Self-Defense Academy, we stress this is one of the biggest reasons to train, because you have to know what it feels like to be in a situation. A lot of what we do is people throwing punches at your face safely, of course, or strangling you, cutting your air supply off, putting you to the ground. If you've never even felt that in a simulation before, then you don't know how to recognize in a real scenario when you're safe. And that, in my opinion, is how something like that happened. And what we always teach with our self-defense seminars is what you want to look for is the earliest available option for escape. When I think back to my own attack, because I had no training and your emotions are so high, all your stress hormones are up, your fight or flight, things are happening in your body. And if I was able to defend myself, which at the time I wasn't because I had no training, but I could see a situation where, if I did get out of that headlock and there was a weapon or a knife or something close by, I could imagine a situation where I would have grabbed that and stabbed the guy or grievously injured him and could be in prison because your emotions are so high. And again, I'm sure Nichelle can speak to this as well. It's just, to me, it really highlights the need for regular training in an environment where you face at least a simulation of that kind of psychological pressure.
Hanya, I just want to give the final word to you on this because you're an advocate for abused women and children. What are your thoughts about this?
I think that it's very difficult to understand how you're actually going to react when you are being compromised or threatened. And I'm not surprised that this gentleman reacted the way he did, because he was actually, that's just pure adrenaline, and he's lost in the moment, and he's angry and scared, and he is just retaliating with all his force. And for him then to go through a sentencing is, for me, not the correct method. I don't think that that is a fair way to be conducting ourselves. Our government and our laws should be there to protect us.
And it can feel like the law's not on your side.
100%. Yeah. And if somebody is breaking into your house, do you actually think that you're going to stand there and think about, oh, I better not do this, I better do that, or not?
Or ask them, excuse me, why are you here?
And by the way, are you carrying a gun? Or in my case, many, many years ago, I did have somebody break into my house, and I immediately ran to the kitchen for a knife. And by the time I reached that knife, he hightailed out of there. So for me, as a civilian, I would say to you that acting quickly, defending yourself quickly is everything. And having our politicians and our police defending that is paramount. And we are missing that today.
We do need to take a quick break, but when we come back, what can someone legally carry for personal protection? That's next. back. With thousands of assaults each year, many are choosing to equip themselves for personal safety. But understanding what's legally permissible for self-defense in Canada isn't so cut and dry. So what exactly can you carry? We have a collection of items here right in front of me. We'll go through them one by one. Why don't we actually start with a baton? Because I'll tell you, I know more people than not who not necessarily carry a baton, but use something for self-defense, whether it's a spray or a taser. Oh, there you go. I don't think this is legal.
No.
No, okay. Is there anything in front of me? Like, how about a taser?
No.
Not legal?
Keep
Look,
going.
scary sounding, though. I mean,
It does make a scary sound, yeah, but
alarm?
legal.
How about spray?
Totally illegal.
Totally illegal?
Totally.
This is bear spray, or actually, this is coyote spray. Dog spray,
Nope.
none of that's legal?
Doesn't matter what label they put on it. It's pepper spray. It's a prohibited weapon.
But what if you walk in parks at night and you carry it for that purpose? Maybe it's about the intent?
The intent. Now, I always say the intent, and again,
Yeah.
and it's what I teach in my self-defense classes. What we sell at my store is dog spray or bear spray. But however, if you're using dog spray and you live downtown Toronto, chances are if the police stop you and ask you why you have bear spray, you better have a
Right.
good excuse why you're using bear spray. However, you have dog spray, and I've seen mailmen carry it, and I've seen, other people just carry it, but it's for dogs. So it's the intent and the way. It's all about articulation.
So, I think it's more about police discretion.
That
the
too.
police make the decision whether they're going to. Technically, this is illegal. You could be arrested after the show. Are they going to come here and arrest you? No, because they're going to use their discretion. Officers know, if someone's walking around in a park at night with that, they're not going to hassle you.
You don't think? Because this could be perceived as a weapon. Let's say I'm on the TTC and I've got this in my pocket.
Right. Different world, yeah. Then you could be in trouble.
Not only that, aren't you more likely to get yourself into an altercation when you're carrying a weapon?
I don't know.
I believe that was something I read once upon a time. And so when you're showing up carrying these weapons,
Right.
you're already sort of
Arming yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're
feel like
showing
you're
up armed,
anticipating
you're
it
anticipating
Right.
attack, and
So
you're
if I could just interject your statement. Texas is one of the safest states in the U.S. And the reason for that is you have the right to carry.
pretty sure in the States they have a little bit more relaxed gun laws than they do in Canada.
I'm
and our
just
gun
making- I
violence in
understand.
Canada is much lower than it is in the United
I
States.
understand,
Isn't that true?
but I understand that, but my point is simply that when we're talking about the right to survival, which is your only instinct as your human instinct, is to survive. If you're out in the streets and you are carrying, I'm not saying that we should be doing that, but I'm just saying it's fascinating that in that state it is working, and it is working for that reason that everybody understands what their rights are and not to cross the line.
But can I interject and just say as
Yes.
well, everyone who, you hope, and probably in Texas we're dealing with a lot of legal firearm owners.
Yes.
People who have training to use those firearms, and they
Correct.
have training to understand the law of what happens if they use them.
Right.
But, I used to carry things like that in my purse until I made regular, high-pressure martial arts training a part of my life. I don't feel I need to carry those things anymore because I
Right.
have the skills. And
Not
to
only
your-
that, before you had the skills, if you went to use it and you weren't trained,
Yeah,
you
I
would be more
pepper-sprayed
likely
myself in the face if it wasn't
right, right. Or you'd be more likely to have your weapon taken from you.
The
right?
point that you're making, which is when everybody knows that everyone can fight, there's
Yes.
less likely to be a
Right.
fight. I don't think we necessarily need weapons for that. If, as a society, we knew that we were, just like we understand most people have a driver's license, if we knew everyone
so what
in
would
this
the
room
alternative
knows
be to that?
you gotta learn true self-defense, in my opinion, and Nichelle can speak to this, but who has the training? Most people don't.
So let me
And,
interject
yeah.
for a second. So first of all, is crime up in the city of Toronto?
Definitely. I don't know the exact statistics, but yes, in general, for sure.
So why are we having this conversation? We're talking about these things because you're seeing encampments left untouched, you're seeing crime up on the TTC, people being pushed in front of buses, in front of streetcars, stabbed on streetcars. You've got these protests that are seemingly lawless, where people are shouting death to Jews. No one is doing anything about it. And so people feel, this is how private militias get started.
Correct.
And so people feel like they have to do something. So, what instruction do the police force operate under?
Things have literally gotten out of control. I completely agree. when I was a police officer, I'm going a little bit off topic, but it's around the same thing. We arrest somebody, put them in jail, and they're out the next day. And it's so frustrating because we do our best as a whole to get the garbage off the street and they're back out. Or how many times you see, released on parole. Oh, just so you know, community, they're not allowed to be. I'm using an example of, let's say, you can't go to the park like a child molester. You can't go to the park, can't be around, certain meters of this and that. But they're out. Of course they're going to be. So it's just a vicious cycle of frustration.
Well, another piece to that is the mental health crisis we're going through now. Okay,
100%.
Yes.
COVID desocialized us. COVID messed with us. Previous governments have cut hospital beds for mental health people who need the attention. So there are a lot of people on the streets with mental health crises that are just not being dealt with.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Coming up next, we've got some personal stories and much more. Stay tuned. Welcome back. With the recent surge in violent crimes, more and more people are expressing unease about their safety while walking the streets alone. One such individual is our guest today, Hanya Kizemchuk, whose viral video on Instagram and TikTok sheds light on her newfound sense of vulnerability in downtown Toronto. Let's take a look.
The other night, I finished late at one of my jobs, and I popped out onto the street. It was rainy and cold out, so I wrapped my head in my Louis Vuitton wrap. I had my Louis Vuitton duffel bag with all my shoes and makeup and whatever I need for that job. And as I jumped out onto the street, I have to say that I realized for the first time ever in the city of downtown Toronto that I realized that I was truly like a sitting duck. I was a little unnerved by that all, I have to be honest. I ran 2 blocks to my car and continuously checking to see if anyone was popping out from somewhere because I was like a stop sign screaming, "Rob me." And that's how I felt for the first time ever in this beautiful city of Toronto, which I grew up in and don't recognize anymore.
So you mentioned feeling like a sitting duck, but hasn't it always been thus that expensive items are a target? I mean, I guess I'm wondering what was so different this time?
It's such a fair question. And when I came outside, and I was dressed to the nines because it was a fashion event, as were the other 200 women and men who were at that event, they were dressed for the event. But I came out onto the street, and immediately across the street, I saw a group of young men, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 guys standing there in a group, and they made eyes on me immediately. And it was rainy, and I mentioned what I was wearing because it went through my mind immediately. I said, wow, these guys have made you. What's going on here? And that's why when tic-tac-toe, this is what I'm wearing, and you should never do this again. And in that moment, some young man brushed up from behind me that was out of my eye line. So he brushed up, and in front came a car immediately, pulled in front of me. The windows were smoked, and a car door opened. And this happened in a matter of seconds. And the only reason that nothing happened was because my reaction was immediate. It was immediate. As soon as I saw that, it all went through my mind, and I took off like a bat out of hell, zigzagging down the street so that my behavior was erratic, and I was calling attention to myself running down that street so that that would, in a way, hopefully dissuade them from coming after me. That's what happened to me. And when I thought about it later, that's when I posted that, and I cannot tell you how many people wrote in telling me, oh, I live in Yorkville, and I went to walk my dog early in the evening, and somebody who is a drug addict came chasing at me with a needle in their hand. Or a young man was telling me, I was on my way home, and somebody came up to me in the street and ripped off my sunglasses off my face. So there is... And what that person wrote was that when he talked about it, people would say to him, well, what are you doing wearing that? At what point do we hide ourselves in society and say, well, I can't wear that. I can't even look at you when I'm walking down the street, or I'm keeping my eyes averted because I'm afraid of danger. This is where it seems to be going.
And it sounds like you did the right thing. Run, zigzag,
100%.
erratically. And I suspect that that's actually something that would be taught in self-defense, is it not?
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's unfortunate that this is the reality that we live in. It would be nice if everyone in Yorkville or anywhere could walk down the street in a big pair of Prada sunglasses and just enjoy them.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think about this in terms of the animal kingdom. Like somebody who's going to attack you, like if we're dealing with a prey animal, they're going to attack, they're going to go after their prey. And for the prey to have the expectation that that lion is just going to be in a good mood and pass them by, it's utopia. It's not real. So I do think, unfortunately, this is not to victim blame at all, but we don't live in that world. And part of the onus is on our politicians. This is partly their fault that we have this mental health crisis, that we have people on the streets who actually need to be accessing services and help. But at the same time, like if I hear somebody say that their sunglasses got ripped off of their face, my first thought is, what were you doing letting somebody get close enough to you to rip your sunglasses off your face?
Well, it could be very surprising. You could be walking, you have your groceries in your hands.
But we teach situational awareness for this reason. It would be nice to walk down the city streets and relax and have your headphones in and be listening to a podcast and be texting your friend. You can do that, but your situational awareness is zero.
So I was together with, my husband was Special Forces at the German Army. So we were together for 28 years. And in those 28 years, he taught me about self-defense, myself and my daughter. So this zigzagging pattern is something that he taught me of how to get away and to be erratic and to move fast. But awareness is everything. And the fact that we're sitting here is because we have a real problem happening in the streets of Toronto, and we need to find positive resolution to protect ourselves.
So if you're
you go ahead.
If you're talking about vulnerability, you know, if you're going out, you're feeling vulnerable, you're wearing, you know, enough clothing on you to house someone for a year, the person who's interested in what you've got on you, they're the vulnerable population. They're actually experiencing vulnerability themselves to be in a situation. People do well when they can. You know, the people don't leave the house and go, you know, I just can't wait to jump someone today. That's going to be fun. You know, not likely. Usually those things happen, you know, in a mental health crisis or a moment of acute, you know, disassociation, or if they're out to obtain something, money.
That's fair, but that shouldn't be Hanya's problem.
No, it's not. It's everyone's problem. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's yours at all. No.
All right, hold that thought. We're going to pick this up on the other side, so don't go away. Welcome back. Donald Gill, a 71-year-old CART member, found himself in a scary situation last December when he was attacked by a total stranger in a Canadian tire store at Keele and St. Clair Avenue in Toronto. Here's what happened.
I had booked an appointment at the Canadian Tire store to get my snow tires put on my car. I suddenly hear somebody shouting really loudly in the aisle right next door to the one that I'm in. The voice starts moving down the aisle. And he got about another 15, 20 feet away from me, and he ran at me. And as he was running, he put his arms up like this. He checks me. And he hits me right across my shoulders here. I fall backwards, and I whack my head on the floor. It hit so hard, I could hear the sound of my own head hitting the floor. I continued to have headaches for probably the next 3 weeks. On a daily basis. All kinds of bruising started showing up, starting from my waistline and going down one leg all the way down below my knee.
All right, so Donald continues to say that he's now interested in self-defense training, but in reality, anyone can become a victim of such incidents, regardless of where they are, and the resulting trauma can be so profound. Lindsay, I'll get you to speak to that, just how real and impactful the psychological effects of these experiences can be, even long after the physical wounds have healed.
Yeah, so trauma itself isn't actually the incident that occurred. It's the lasting effect on you based on the incident. And the incident could be anything. It could be it could be a domestic violence situation. It could lead someone to just be walking around with unease because they're in a situation where they really don't know what to expect at any time. And that impacts everything they do day to day. It keeps them on high alert. If something like this were to occur, even a story of something like this occurring to somebody that you know could leave you with fears, right? Nightmares, a lot of difficulty getting through the day, feeling safe. And it can take a lot of undoing. So with respect to mental health, my role is peer support. So because I have had my own lived experiences with mental health and my own traumas, I use those experiences to support others through their own recovery. So after an incident like this, you end up in a situation where you now are in your own sort of recovery. And it takes a lot of support and a lot of work sometimes to get back to where you were, if you even can.
Nikki, you were open earlier about your experience. What was it that helped you most in your recovery?
I think, frankly, martial arts training was a huge part of it because I experienced something that was so shocking. It took weeks for me to even be able to leave the house because my face was so messed up. But what stuck with me after that event, it wasn't actually the physical violence. That kind of, the adrenaline and stuff wears off pretty quickly. But what stuck with me was that feeling of powerlessness, that in the moment, I didn't know how to escape. Like, being in a headlock is pretty scary. And it was the feeling of not knowing how to escape. That's a very demoralizing feeling that can make you feel very vulnerable forever if you don't face it. And so with our self-defense seminars, what we try to create is a place where people can come with experiences like this and feel comfortable to step off the mats and kind of train at their level in a way that is kind of trauma-informed. But
that's why I learned martial arts, for the same reason.
Yeah.
I was also a victim, unfortunately, was sexual assault, and it was when I was very young. So, back I was 7 years old till I was 14 years old, and it was ongoing, and it was from a family member. And when I finally got strong enough to say enough is enough, I went through a lot of trauma, many emotions, guilt, hatred, like so many, and it broke up my entire family. And at the time, the only ones that I felt helped me through that whole process was the police officers. And that's, my journey started when I walked into a martial arts place, because I said, no one's ever gonna hurt me again. And then I went on to be a police officer so that I could pay forward everything that I learned and everything that they helped me through, hence the martial arts, hence the self-defense. And I had a great career of just literally doing that, paying everything back. And the first time I ever told my true story, where in detail, I was at like a fitness boot camp, which brings the fitness into the self-defense. And it had been 27 years. I had never said anything. And I told that story to a room such as this, and I cried, and I actually vomited after, because it's such an emotional thing. But every time I tell the story, every time I share the story, it gets better and better, and it heals me and it heals others. So it all comes full circle, and we're here to share our traumas, which, in turn help everyone.
You've essentially...
Sorry for that moment.
You've essentially talked exactly about peer support, right? Mm-hmm. The whole purpose of it is taking your bad experiences, my lemons, so to speak, and turning them into lemonade for somebody else. But you have to give meaning to these, tragic situations.
Yes.
If they happen to you, you end up lost unless you can find a meaning for it. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding other people who need your support.
We're short on time, but in just a moment, we're actually going to roll a clip from your new series, Fit to Fight Back. Just tell us very quickly, what is it that inspired you to do this?
Well, you see a lot of fitness content online. You see how to throw a punch, how to throw a kick. And then you see resources that tell you how to defend yourself in a situation, but you sit and you watch them. You don't get up and put them into practice. And this series is so important for me because you're facilitating a mind-body connection so that those reflexes can activate when you're put into various scenarios of attack. So it's very important for me to get people off their seats and practicing these moves so that if something happens to them, they can anticipate what's going to happen before it does.
All right, well, hang tight because we're going to get to that on the other side of this break, so don't go away. We're back with Nichelle, Laus, self-defense and safety expert and former police officer who's ready to demonstrate some self-defense moves. And joining us in the action is Anjelica Scannura, host of the upcoming series, Fit to Fight Back, Modern Self-Defense for Women. Let's roll a clip. What happens after that scene?
So what happens next is I learn how to fight back so that everybody also at home can learn how to fight back if they're put into that situation.
So let's talk moves. Some practical, some basic, some practical moves. Because so this, in reality, I mean, we're not going to be practicing jujitsu against an attacker. So what are some basic things that anyone in the audience can use?
I think I want to go over a stance before we get into actual moves. I want to just show you the importance of a stance. So I want to show you an example actually. So if you're standing just with your feet side by side. Okay, now give her a push. Just give her a push. Be careful, right?
Right, yeah. Right,
so now I want you to stand bladed as a boxer or a kickboxer would, which comes back to that martial arts training. And police officers stand in this stance as well with their hands up, and we call that the interview stance. Now try and give her a push. She's gonna be a little bit more solid. See how your just your actual base, you're just a little bit more solid. Now, not that you're gonna walk around like that. You're always gonna be standing, right?
Honestly,
well, I do too, but it's from our training, right?
The minimal amount of training I've had, I'm now like this everywhere I go instead of like this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, or hands in
really
your pocket,
does help.
or it does help, and you just feel a lot more you feel confident, you feel stable, and probably anyone looking at you, you just look a lot more confident. Probably wouldn't mess with you.
Yeah.
If you want to go into the strikes now, really basic ones, I say as much as I love to box and use punches, I always say open palm strike.
Now, why is that?
Just because it won't hurt your hand. You're not going to break your hand. It gives you a larger surface for the target. So this meaty part of our hand down here, you're going to open and I would say aim for the target. I would say target area would be nose. You ever get hit in the nose? You feel a little bit, your eyes get teary. Again, you never want to be in a situation where you're going to be where you have to fight. But if you do, you want to distract and get away. So the purposes of this is, yes, to hurt them, but at least to distract them, make their eyes tear, do other things, and get away. So what I want you to do is use your hips and torque it right in. So don't just stop at the target, go right through. We teach younger kids as well, so we teach their daughters, we teach women and kids, and so you can even do that if you're a smaller person, because you can actually strike upwards.
But I like that, the thought of going through them as opposed to stopping at the target.
You really have to have that mindset. So not only you're physically fit and aware, you're also mentally prepared to fight to the fullest. This is your life. Your life is at stake.
What if someone grabs you by the wrist?
Yeah, so if we're doing an arm grab, let's say, which is pretty much a common one for a lot of people, instinctively you would probably just want to do that, which is almost, I want to say impossible, but it's hard to get out because your fingers are over her. So you want to go in the other direction, even if you just bring your arm down, just bring it down. I can't hold on. Body mechanics will not allow my thumb to actually hold on to
And I feel like sometimes the attacker is not expecting you to make a move like that. You have to surprise them almost.
That's right.
So don't go up, go down.
That's right. Or another technique that I use, and if you grab my arm, I'll actually take it a little step forward and I'll move. So I'm losing that, but I'm also putting my elbow over top, going down a little bit, and then using that to further get away. Right. But all you have to remember is, you know, the movement itself. If you're grabbing me, you're gonna pull away, use the thumb. And if it's not working, let's say, oh my gosh, you went the wrong way, or oh, you grabbed me the wrong way, you're not gonna tell your perpetrator, can you actually hold me the other way?
Yeah.
No, you're gonna just, it's basically, do you remember wax on, wax off? I know it sounds silly, but back in the day, the Karate Kid, right? Yeah. It's the same idea with any of these body, you know, that one there, we're using our circular motion. If it's not working that way, you're gonna go the other way. Yeah. Another great one, arm grab, is a choke. A very frequent one is a choke. Is it okay if I choke you? Yeah. Okay, so if I'm gonna go choke you, a very simple one, which I teach even to the kids, because again, easy movements, is just taking your 2 fingers and going, I want you each, you know, try this. Just take your 2 fingers and go right there and give it a little push.
Brutal.
You'll feel a tickle or a cough. You might even
really
cough a little bit.
uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, and you're doing that to yourself with minimal pressure. So if you imagine yourself being, and you give someone like that, like giving that wind again and going through that target, you're gonna at least put them off balance, give them something, oh my gosh, not expecting that one. Yeah. Because most people will go, they'll panic and they'll grab their, you know, they'll struggle. No, just go right through. And it's great too, again, if you're a kid just trying to do that, get rid of them. Yeah. So don't worry about what we were brought up, you know, being taught. Oh my gosh, don't bite, don't gouge. In that situation, gouge the eyes. Give them a bite if you have to. Get that DNA underneath your fingernails. You know, taking a chunk out of someone, as gross as that sounds, it's your life. Yep. Okay. Yep. And pretty easy to find a, you know, if someone's missing a piece of their, you know, chin, let's say, the police are going to be able to really find them a lot easier, right? Identify them exactly. I know that sounds gross, but you have to think mindset. You have to think my life or theirs.
Well, this has been so valuable. Thank you, Nichelle and Anjelica. Thank you very much for being the aggressor.
Yes.
The tables have turned. We're going to be right back. We're going to take a short break. Stick around. Don't go away. Welcome back. It's that time in the show when we hear from you, our audience, and leading the charge today in our in-studio audience is Cynthia. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay, so I'm on the subway. I'm a senior citizen. What's the best way at my age to be able to help myself and to protect myself?
Some of the tips that I've given for specifically TTC or any, you know, public transit, there's a couple specifically if you can, and I know sometimes it's hard, especially when it's busy, but if you can stay next to the conductor or at least near them, always be aware, you know, and now a lot of them, everything is being recorded, whereas before only certain lines were. And if you do happen to press, if you are in trouble and you press the alarm, that I want you to know what happens behind the scenes. So that conductor is then talking to basically the hub, and then the hub is contacting police. So help is on the way. And just always, I always say, please don't try to fall asleep anymore. But gone are the days where you can take a little nap on the TTC or, you know, you know, to get to your next stop. But you just have to always be scanning, always be aware. If you're out waiting for the subway, you know, either wait in the designated waiting areas, or you can just, you know, stand up against the wall. Don't go anywhere near. You know, if you see something, just walk away, escape. You know, try and just stay away as far as possible.
Thank you, Cynthia. Michael, go ahead.
I see the value of self-defense courses, but I think they are inadequate in a lot of situations, and I think it could put people in danger. Knife attacks are really up in this city, and most self-defense experts will tell you that it doesn't matter how strong you are, how skilled you are against a person with a knife. If you're up against a person with a knife, the best thing you can do is run, but if you can't run, you're in trouble. With regard to hunters and prey that was raised earlier, I think the hunters would be a little more reluctant to take on the prey if they thought the prey had a weapon of some sort. And it seems to me that the laws that we currently have are antediluvian. They're based on the life that was here maybe in the 60s in Canada. In the United States, they have stand your ground laws. They have more liberal laws in terms of defending yourself. I'd like to know whether any of the panelists are aware of an attempt, a serious attempt to improve the laws so that ordinary citizens, regardless of their abilities, can defend themselves.
Oh, we're not in Kansas anymore, that's for sure.
That's right.
In terms of the laws, we have what we have. They're pretty broad. I can't see them changing anytime soon other than weaponizing people, right? So the law as it is now, it does allow you to stand your ground. You don't have to retreat. The law in Canada does not require you to back down or retreat. You can defend yourself. You just have to be reasonable in what you're doing.
But the hunters can carry bats, they can
Right.
carry knives. We can't carry even pepper spray. I'm not talking about going around spraying people,
Right.
Liberally. I'm talking about defending oneself. To defend yourself, you can't do that. And the laws seem to be out of step with the current situation that we are now facing in our city. There are a lot of people here in this room, they can take a self-defense course, but they're not going to have the strength
Right.
to withstand somebody who's really
Of course not.
coming at them.
So would you agree that the laws are out of step?
I think they're out of step, but how far do we want to go in weaponizing individuals, right? Do we then allow people with mental health issues to carry weapons? Do we allow, it's a slippery slope. We have to be careful in whatever laws we do change, because the more we put weapons out there, weapons can be used against you as well, right? Not just against attackers. So it's a complicated issue for sure.
I think there are other lines of defense that we're not talking about right now, such as if you're on the subway and you're feeling insecure, you're somewhere and you're feeling strange, not just having your cell phone at the ready, but making the call, saying, yes, I'm just on this train car, I'm landing at this point, this is the person I'm looking at, I'm feeling a little bit strange. Already you've taken a different sort of approach to your defense. You're calling in reinforcements, which I think could be very powerful, and we're not really talking about that too much with respect to showing up.
But again, with Michael's example, you've got some guy coming at you with a
Exactly.
knife.
You're not gonna pull
You're
out
not
your
going to pull
phone.
out your phone. You're not going to.
Not practical.
That's like a life or death type of
But
situation, so it's hard.
If I may, though, there's no self-defense course in the space of a 4-week, a 6-week, whatever it is, that will give you what you need to have a fighting chance against a knife. And you can be a military or police and be killed by a knife. That being said, there are certain principles, and I cannot emphasize this enough. When we teach self-defense, it's an introduction, but it is a lifestyle choice you make. We have a guy who works with us who was attacked by a knife on the subway. He got cut. You're almost always going to get cut when you go up against a knife, but he understood the principles of wrist control that we use in certain martial arts, and he walked away with his life because he maintained control of the wrist. For myself, knowing how many people carry a knife in the wintertime, I have my gloves in my pocket, but I have a pair of gloves that are tactical gloves that probably Nichelle would sell that are fairly blade resistant. There are little things you can do to buy yourself opportunities, but I don't believe that it's hopeless. I've seen a lot of people walk away from scary stuff because they have training.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Michael, thank you for your question and your comment, and that does it for us this evening. To get in touch, you can send us an email at comments@thezoomer.com. As always, a big thank you to my panel for your time and to you at home for watching. We'll see you soon. For now, it's time to zoom out.